I'm Dr. Caelum Derux, better living through psychology. Today's talk is about something subtle, something corrosive, something that wears down a man's soul over time, without him even realizing it. It's about how men get used, not in grand betrayals, but in small compromises. Not with outright rejection, but with just enough affection to keep him tethered. Today we're talking about the feast of crumbs. Every man who's ever been emotionally invested in a woman who gave him less than he deserved knows exactly what I mean. The slow decay of dignity doesn't come from being outright abandoned. It comes from being given just enough to stay. A kind word here, a kiss after days of silence, a breadcrumb of sex after months of emotional neglect. And like a starving man crawling through the desert, he devours it. Not because it's fulfilling, but because it's all he's been offered. This is the reality for countless men, good men, who find themselves in relationships where they're used emotionally, financially, spiritually, and sometimes physically, and they don't even know it, because the conditioning runs deep. Be patient, be understanding. She's just going through a phase, and meanwhile, he's being trained to accept crumbs as a feast. What most men don't understand is that being used rarely feels violent. It often feels noble. He tells himself he's being the bigger person, that he's loving unconditionally, that one day she'll see his worth and reciprocate. But here's the problem. The longer you accept less, the more you teach her that less is all she has to give. You become complicit in your own depletion. And what starts as patience turns into a pattern. You show up every time she calls, even when she ignores you for days. You give without receiving. You initiate every conversation, every plan, every ounce of connection, and you think that persistence makes you loyal. But to her, it often makes you invisible. Because in the realm of attraction and respect, desperation doesn't read as devotion, it reads as lack. There's a cruel psychology at play here, one that isn't always intentional, but is always real. When a woman knows you'll tolerate the bare minimum, she stops offering more. Not necessarily out of malice, but out of instinct. Human beings, by nature, conserve effort where it's not required. And if she knows she can get your time, your attention, your body, your love, without giving depth, respect, or reciprocity, she will. And you'll let her. Not because you're weak, but because you're hoping. Hoping that one more act of kindness will unlock her affection. Hoping that if you give enough, she'll finally see you. But relationships aren't built on hope. They're built on mutual investment. And when one person's pouring while the other's sipping, what you have isn't love, it's exploitation. Let's get brutally honest here. Many women don't even want the man they're using. They want the benefits, the validation, the safety net, the good morning texts that remind them they're desirable, the rides, the dinners, the favors, the emotional availability without emotional responsibility. And they'll keep you around for that. As long as you keep showing up, you become the fallback guy, the placeholder, the therapist, the provider, everything but the partner. And you'll keep trying to win a race. She's not even running. She doesn't see you as the prize. She sees you as the proof. Proof that she's still desirable, that someone will still chase her, that she can still command affection without returning it. And if you're not careful, you'll spend years being that man, hoping, waiting, dying slowly on the inside as you starve for the love you keep trying to earn. Here's the terrifying part. It's not always obvious. She might say she loves you. She might sleep with you. She might introduce you to her friends. But none of that matters if her actions don't match her words. Does she initiate? Does she show up for you? Or only when she's lonely? Does she respect your time, your boundaries, your emotional energy? Or do you feel like a servant in your own relationship? Many men confuse attachment with connection. Just because she doesn't leave, doesn't mean she loves you. Some women stay, not because they care, but because it's convenient. You're a consistent source of comfort, attention, and stability. And as long as you keep giving those things freely, she has no reason to walk away. Why would she? You're feeding her ego while starving your soul. The man who lives on crumbs slowly forgets what a full meal even tastes like. Over time, his standards erode. He stops asking for affection because he's afraid of being labeled needy. He suppresses his disappointment because he doesn't want to push her away. He learns to celebrate scraps as though they're gold. And the tragedy is, he starts convincing himself that this is normal, that all relationships feel like this, that real love is supposed to feel like work, and so he overcompensates. He tries harder, plans more dates, sends more texts, gives more compliments, all while growing emptier by the day. But what he doesn't realize is that every extra ounce of effort he gives without reciprocation just deepens the imbalance. He becomes the emotional employee in a relationship where he's not even a partner, and he calls that love. But love doesn't look like exhaustion. Love doesn't feel like begging. This is where self-respect either makes or breaks a man, because the man with self-respect doesn't beg to be chosen. He chooses himself first. He doesn't stay in places where he's tolerated. He doesn't confuse potential with partnership. He doesn't wait around for someone to one day wake up and see his worth. He walks away when his value isn't met with mutual investment. And yes, it's hard, it's lonely, it hurts like hell. But that temporary pain is nothing compared to the slow soul death of staying in a relationship that drains you. The longer you accept crumbs, the more you forget you were built for more. And here's the thing, some of you were never taught what more looks like. You didn't grow up seeing healthy love. You didn't have models of mutual respect. So you think almost enough is just how it works. But I promise you, real connection doesn't starve you, it feeds you. One of the hardest pills to swallow is that she might not be evil, just indifferent. She might not hate you, she might not be malicious, but she also might not care enough to meet you halfway. And that's even more dangerous, because indifference can wear the mask of politeness. It can say thank you while taking advantage. It can post selfies with you while texting someone else. It can sit next to you on the couch while being a million miles away emotionally. And you'll think, well, at least she's here. But presence isn't love, attention isn't investment, and proximity doesn't equal partnership. If she's not choosing you with her actions, her consistency, her effort, then she's not choosing you at all. And no amount of patience, loyalty, or proving yourself will change that. This is where men must reclaim their standards, not from a place of bitterness, but from a place of clarity. You have to stop asking, what can I do to keep her? And start asking, does this serve who I'm becoming? Because relationships aren't about keeping someone, they're about building with someone. And if she's not building, if she's only taking, then what you have isn't a relationship, it's a drain. And drains don't just take your time, they take your energy, your self-esteem, your vision. Before you know it, you're living around her moods, you're tailoring your identity to keep her happy. And the worst part, you think that makes you strong. But there is nothing strong about abandoning yourself, about being a servant in hopes of one day becoming a king. Kings don't wait for permission to be seen. They walk where they're honored, or they don't walk at all. So what's the answer? First, you stop negotiating with crumbs. You stop justifying why you're not getting what you need. You stop telling yourself that love is supposed to hurt. Then you get radically honest. What am I actually receiving in this connection? What is this costing me emotionally? And if the answers don't feel good, you don't beg, you pivot. You pull back. You create distance, not to manipulate, but to evaluate. To observe what changes when you stop pouring. Does she step up? Does she lean in? Or does she disappear? Her response will tell you everything you need to know. Because when someone values you, your withdrawal won't go unnoticed. And if it does, then you were being used all along. And the moment you see that clearly, that's when your healing begins. That's when you stop starving. That's when you remember you were never meant to survive on crumbs. You were built to feast. As a man, your energy is sacred. Your attention, your time, your emotional availability. These aren't things to be handed out casually. Yet the modern dating world has conditioned so many men to become emotional vending machines, handing out affection and stability in hopes of a relationship jackpot. You give and give and give, thinking maybe, just maybe, if you're good enough, consistent enough, soft enough, she'll finally open up. But that's not how genuine connection works. You don't earn love by draining yourself. You don't build trust by tolerating mistreatment. In fact, the opposite is true. The more you tolerate, the less she respects you. Because deep down, we all know that someone who respects themselves won't accept neglect. If you're always there, no matter how she treats you, she starts to assume you have nothing better. And when she assumes that, your value drops, not because you aren't valuable, but because you've forgotten to protect your value yourself. Men who've been conditioned to feast on crumbs often don't even realize they've been starved until they experience real connection. And when they do, it's almost disorienting. A A woman who actually listens, who reciprocates, who initiates, who holds space for your emotions instead of weaponizing them. It feels foreign, too easy, too peaceful. You question it because your nervous system is so used to the tension of chasing, proving, fixing. But real love doesn't feel like adrenaline. It feels like exhale. You don't have to perform to be worthy. You don't have to beg to be seen. You simply are, and she meets you there. But you'll never find that kind of woman if you keep sacrificing your standards for the one who strings you along. If you want peace, you have to stop mistaking chaos for chemistry. You have to stop mistaking crumbs for love, and that takes strength. The kind of strength most men aren't taught, but every man can reclaim. One of the reasons this dynamic is so common is because it preys on a man's noblest qualities, his desire to provide, protect, and persevere. Good men are especially vulnerable to being used, not because they're weak, but because they're strong in all the wrong places. They push through emotional pain instead of questioning it. They stay committed when they should be walking away. They confuse endurance with loyalty. But real loyalty starts with self-loyalty. And if you're betraying your own needs just to keep someone who's not even choosing you, that's not loyalty, that's self-abandonment. You're not being noble by staying, you're being conditioned. Conditioned to believe that if you stop giving, you'll stop being loved. And that's the lie. The truth, if love requires that you diminish yourself, it's not love, it's control, it's emotional convenience. And the moment you see that is the moment you begin your return to power. Reclaiming your power starts with boundaries. Not the kind you yell, not the kind you post online, but the kind that say quietly and clearly, I will not settle for one-sided love. The kind that walk away when needs are ignored, not because you're angry, but because you know your worth. You stop chasing, you stop proving, you stop hoping that this time will be different, and you start choosing peace over performance. You start creating space for the kind of woman who actually values what you bring. Because the truth is, there are women out there who won't make you beg, who do know what you're worth, but they'll never find you if you're stuck chasing someone who's only offering enough to keep you just barely alive. You were not born to be someone's backup plan. You were not designed to live on scraps. You were built to lead, to love deeply, and to be met fully. Stop accepting less. So if you're listening to this and realizing you've been feasting on crumbs, pause. Don't shame yourself. Don't beat yourself up. You didn't know. You were trying your best. You were loving the only way you were taught. But now you do know. Now you see it clearly. And that clarity is the beginning of everything. You get to raise your standards, not out of spite, but out of love. You get to choose relationships that don't require your silence, that don't ask for your soul in exchange for temporary attention, that don't feel like emotional labor. You get to choose you. And when you do, when you finally walk away from the crumbs and make space for the feast, you'll look back and wonder why you ever settled in the first place. Because you were always worthy. You just needed to remember. And now, my friend, you finally have.